Members of the committee, I'll call the meeting to order. We have quorum. If you would sign in, please, and mute your devices. Are there any conflicts of interest by any members of the committee? Seeing none, there are no delegations, there are no presentations. We have a couple of items for consideration. Can I get a mover? Sorry. Yes, before we do that. Sorry, imagine. And I just said I was going to do it and I forgot. We're going to have some introductions by the Commissioner of new staff here at the region. Commissioner?
Okay. Some of the folks aren't here, but I'll introduce them anyway. So we've had a couple of new staff members join us over the summer. The first person I'd like to introduce is Dave Hayworth. Dave, where are you? Stand up. So Dave has been hired on as our official plan consultant. He is going to be primarily responsible for writing the official plan. This is the role of just putting your head down and writing out the new official plan from start to finish in terms of all of the policy. So he'll be working very closely with the staff on a full-time basis preparing the official plan. In terms of his background, Dave is a registered professional planner. He has 30 years of experience working as a planner in Niagara. Started his career at the town of Lincoln, then was a manager of policy at the city of Niagara Falls, and most recently as a manager of policy at the town of Fort Erie. So we'd like to welcome Dave. Kirsten, she's not here, but when she shows up, I'll point her out. So that'll be a bit of an embarrassing moment. But Kirsten is been hired on as our senior planner to process, review, and approve all of the secondary plans that are generated by the local municipalities. No, not Kristen. You know, so as you know, we get secondary plans that are prepared by the local municipalities that we review and approve. We currently have about 16 in the mill, so it's quite an extensive workflow. Kirsten's background, she's a registered professional planner. She has 13 years of professional experience, 3 years with the Township of West Lincoln, 10 years with the City of Hamilton. So she's a recent addition to our team from the City of Hamilton. Amy Alderman, she'll also come down later on. She's an entry-level development planner helping us process development applications that are generated from the local municipalities. She has a background in public health and a master's in city planning, planning and development, and she's currently working on her professional designation. And so she was a she's a Niagara girl. She was a student planner with us for about a year, and we saw her as a very talented individual, so we offered her a position with the department. And the fourth person I'd like to introduce is Ilya Stedic. Ilya is a CET, a Certified Engineering Technologist, and also a project management professional, and will be working with Phil Lambert in the water wastewater development planning area, primarily modeling and calculating flows with respect to water systems and wastewater systems at the various facilities that we have across the region. So I just wanted to highlight those new additions to our team. Very pleased to have them all on board as we continue our mission to create a prosperous and growing Niagara. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner, and welcome to these 4 new additions to our staff, and good luck to them in their work here. Now, items for consideration. We have PDS 33, the Smarter Niagara Incentive Program 2017 Budget Update. Could I have a mover and seconder for this report, please? Yes, Councillor Beatty and Councillor Annunziata. Anyone want to speak to this?
Do you want to provide, Mary can provide.
Marion, can you provide an update here?
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair. The purpose of this report is essentially to transfer $447,543 from the Smart Growth Reserve to partner on Smarter Niagara Incentive Program grants approved by local municipalities as of August 2017. It will also allow us to finish entering historical commitments into the new financial management system. The Smart Growth Reserve was intended to fund SNP projects. This report will have no impact on the 2017 budget. And the report also requests that we be able to message that there will be no additional partnering on Smarter Niagara Incentive Program projects to the end of 2017, having reached the budget.
Thank you very much, Marion. Are there any questions? Councillor Annunziata.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I'm just wondering if, when we do some data mining on a very over-prescribed project, I'm hoping that tells us something about the economic climate out there. Like, who's utilizing this program? Why are they utilizing this program? And we can interpret that data, because we have a very oversubscribed program right now. What is that telling us? Is it small businesses that are cash-strapped with respect to their capital costs, and that's why they need these dollars to move forward? I mean, are we doing that kind of data mining to justify possibly an increase? And then maybe I'll put that to Economic Development, Mr. Oakes, or even Mr. Mustachi.
I can kick it off, Madam Chair. So as you're aware, we've been talking about initiating a review of our various incentive programs, which was referenced as part of our development charge initiative. We will be initiating that soon, and that is exactly the intent of the process, to validate the effectiveness of our incentive programs. What I will say is that we have been monitoring them, and they're utilized quite differently across the region. And the other thing that I would note is that they were created at a time, they're legacy incentive programs. So they were created at a time when Niagara was a little bit different than it is today. And so there was a focus on sort of like startup. There was a focus on assistance with facades and smaller scale initiatives. And over the course of time, we've tried to change that direction to more strategically focused economic incentives. But we haven't really come full circle with that. So I think what you're suggesting is absolutely correct. We have to come forward with a more robust analysis of the various programs, who's utilizing them, and what the outcomes are. So that will all be embedded in the review that we will be initiating over the course of the next year.
And that's coming forward December 2018, is that correct?
No later than 2018. We're preparing the scope of work and the terms of reference for that as we speak. It's just that the staff that'll be working on it, we're sort of working on the development charge program. Once that program is done, we can move into the incentive review.
Appreciate those responses. Thank you, Mr. Mustachi.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Augustine?
Thanks very much, Madam Chair. I was looking for maybe to kind of kickstart that information myself. I had the same question that Councillor Annunziata asked. So is it possible to get a listing of the projects that have been approved or as part of this or whatever? I don't think we've ever kind of seen that.
Certainly, we're going to be providing a very fulsome audit, if you will, of all of the incentive programs and the various projects that we've been supporting over the years as part of our incentive review. I'd be inclined to wait until that comes forward, because then we'll have the resources to look at it very comprehensively and report on it comprehensively. I don't expect that to be, later than the end of the year anyway. So that'll likely be the first step in our review process. So certainly, yeah, we're gonna be doing that. It's just As I said, I'd like to provide that in conjunction with the initiative that we're undertaking.
Okay. I'm just looking for the list, so can I have that? That's my request. Second, I'm confused because of what the commissioner said to Councillor Nunziata, where it's going to be the end of 2018, and now it's the end of 2017, this review.
So just to be clear, the deadline for the completion of the review is 2018. That's like final adoption, implementation of the program.
Okay.
We're undertaking the study right now,
Yeah.
and you'll be receiving bits and pieces of it over the course of the next year. What I suggested is by the end of this year, you'll at least get a complete listing of all of our contributions to the incentive programs and who the recipients were for those benefits.
Okay.
In the meantime, if we can put together a quick list of, say, the recipients in the last, say, 3 to 5 years, we'll provide that.
Well, maybe even just this year, because we're talking, Madam Chair, about a budget amount, so it's the 447,000. What's in there?
Yeah,
I don't
we can
know.
do that. Not a problem.
So, for example, as a councillor, you know, I might be involved in a project that's one of these projects is funded. I don't think I am, but I might be, so I might need to claim a conflict. So, like, we need to know what it is we're doing here in a transparent way. So that's what I'm asking for. Perfect. The other comment, I'm very pleased that we are moving in this direction. I said that during the development charges. I've said that before. Because the last time we looked at the incentive program, we actually had it calculated that it was for every dollar that we invested in this, it created or it generated 9 times that dollar, $9 of private investment in Niagara. So, you know, you add it up, this is $500,000. This is a huge investment in Niagara, and that was across kind of, you know, for a bunch of years, and it's a few years ago, but 9 times. So I'm very supportive of this, and I think, you know, if there's any way we can keep going with the project, I'm going to have questions locally, and I'm sure the mayors are, and the regional councillors for their local municipalities. Sorry, I wasn't talking fast enough. No problem. Because, for instance, we've approved a project in Font Hill. It hasn't started yet. Is it in? Is it out? Are they going to get the funding? You know, those kind of questions. So maybe we can hear from whether staff have reached out, no doubt they have, to the local municipalities, and all of those kind of approved projects are all in, even though they may not have been started.
Through you, Madam Chair, yes, we did reach out when it became apparent that we were coming very close to being oversubscribed on this budget. We did reach out to all municipalities requesting an update through August 4th of 2017.
Okay.
What projects they had requested, what had been locally approved. All municipalities were very helpful in providing that data, and all of that has gone into inform this report.
Perfect. That's great. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Look forward to receiving the additional information.
And thank you for
Thank
the
you.
questions and comments, Councillor. Councillor Height?
Thank you. Similar questions or concerns. Before we deal with and confirm the 2018 budget, we should know how well we're doing with all the incentive programs before we put any money in the 2018 budget. So waiting to the end of the year is too late, because normally this council wants to deal with the budget prior to the end of November, which I always believe is too soon, but we should have this information well in advance of that. But just to wrap my head around the information we're going to end up seeing, the waterfront incentive program, which I felt has been well received, extremely well received, to the point that someone in the Fort Erie area, Bay Beach, was questioning me about what was going on with Bay Beach, and I just got a copy of the report so I can give it to them, because they're excited about the news that there's going to be a lot of development in the Fort Erie Bay Beach area. So it's important to put all of them together and let us see where we're spending the money and where we're doing it in a wise fashion, to see if it's good investment for us. As Councillor Augustine mentioned, 9 times the value, in a sense. If we invest $1, 9 times that comes back we should be seeing that in a wholesome report with everything. And I think that's what you're talking about at the end of next year, that we're gonna see everything wrapped together. Is that not what I'm assuming?
Um, Through you, Madam Chair, I'd like to present that to you much sooner than the end of 2018. 2018 is the implementation of a new program if we go that route. But that basic information in terms of a listing of the projects, sorry, a listing of the incentives, the projects, the benefit, participants, that'll be probably Q1 of 2017.
Well, that's great, because some of us feel they've been working well. Some of us would like to see them work maybe better, and we could pick and choose and say, as a council, this one works extremely well, this one just, okay, so let's shift the money, instead of having your department shift it, having council make the determination that it's more important to invest our money in A versus B. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Are there any other questions or comments from the members of the committee? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? Any opposed? And that's carried unanimously. Moving on to the second item for consideration, it's PDSC 29. It's PDS 34, the Smithville Urban Area Long-Term Growth Strategy. Could I have a mover and a seconder for the report? Councillor Timms, Councillor Height, and the Commissioner will speak to the report before your questions.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So just in terms of some background, this is coming forward at the request of the township relative to the land area in Smithville that's quickly dwindling in terms of the urban development potential. Just as a matter of background, the township of West Lincoln has been considering its urban land needs actually since the region adopted Niagara 2031 about 10 years ago. And at that time, they identified the fact that they would be running low on urban lands if the pace of development continued as it was at that time. So over the course of those years, the township was quite proactive in initiating a municipal comprehensive review, looking at their long-term land needs, looking at the rationalization of some of their redundant legacy urban lands. They dealt with a hamlet designation, and they also dealt with some industrial lands that were not viable, and basically came up with a development strategy in the short term that would allow them to continue to develop. But now they're at the point with the uptick in interest in development, we're projecting that they may actually be tapped out of urban land within 5 to 6 years. So the process of bringing urban lands on stream takes about 4 to 5 years. And so they've requested that we initiate a partnership arrangement with them to start looking at potentially an urban boundary expansion. Just to go back a little bit, so the township did undertake a municipal comprehensive review. They've identified a population that they would like to get to by 2041. And the council, the local council, has considered that. And as part of the Niagara 2041 process, requested that that quantum of population be included in our forecast for the township, which we then accommodated. Not to the full extent, but pretty close. So the baseline conditions are there for us to move forward with this initiative. Our contribution to the process, essentially, because it's a regional planning matter, is we are supporting the process through the hiring of a consultant that is coordinating the process itself. As far as the background studies and all of the requirements to support the urban expansion, we're recommending that the landowners in the area form a developers group and that they front end the costs of that through the local municipality, and that there be a recovery mechanism in place at the end of the day to offset that investment. So that in a nutshell summarizes the direction of the report. Basically, we're just asking for the Planning and Development Committee and Regional Council to endorse our ability to continue working with the township staff and with property owners in the area. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner. Seeing questioners here, Councillor Marshall.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and an excellent report. And then I get down to financial consideration, and I hear words like partnership, and it says that there's really no financial implication, when in fact there are. But it's already appears in our budget, so it's not going to be additional funds. It's all going to be accommodated within the Planning and Development Services approved budget. Obviously, there's financial considerations. In general, I think when we see that in a report, I'd like to know what the numbers are. Not that it can be accommodated within the global budget of planning services. And secondly, when I hear a word like partnership, is this a formal partnership? Is it written somewhere so I might be able to take a peek at the responsibilities the region has and what limitations, or none or not, that we have in this partnership? I certainly welcome it, and I know you work with every community in the region, but it sounds a little more formal and maybe more expensive. So number one, I want to know how much it costs in dollars and cents. And two, can you define partnership, please?
Certainly. So as I mentioned, our contribution at this point in time, the regional contribution, is hiring a consultant to assist the township with the process. Our budget allocation for that retainer is about $30,000. Beyond that, the background studies for an urban expansion are very costly. The total program may be $1 million, it may be $2 million. I actually don't know at this point in time. The strategy that generally is the norm out there is that there's a partnership between the local municipality and the benefiting landowners to front end the cost of that investment. So we're sort of like on the periphery. So at some point in time, there'll be a financial arrangement, if you will, an MOU, a funding agreement entered into between the landowners and the local municipality to front end all of the studies that are required. The landowners get their money back when development happens, if and when it happens, through the local municipality, potentially through development charge credits or other means. All of that, Councillor Marshall, will come forward once we get into this in a little bit more detail. We're just at the early days. I would suspect that over the course of the next number of months, you'll be seeing more and more information coming forward.
That's helpful, but this is, as we do things incrementally sometimes, that's just my concern, and maybe more global than just this particular report. I'd like to know the approximate costs of entering into a partnership with one of the local area municipalities, plain and simple. So I've heard 30,000 for a consultant, and that's fine, but at least we know what that is. And any other, so it would be an FTE working 1/3 of his time. Is that the kind of thing you might envision? Or
Yeah, as I said, at this point in time, it's a consultant retainer. We've hired a consultant who is not a staff member.
okay, all right. See, those are the kinds of things.
Who's not a staff member, who specializes in urban expansions. That is almost their exclusive specialization, to assist the township in sort of managing the process.
Okay, and our consultant would get involved with the developers and try to, in some sort of framework, to get them to contribute for the studies.
Yes.
That it'll be so expensive in the upcoming years.
So
okay.
there's certainly if I may, Madam Chair, there's certainly a regional interest here to make sure that the process that's followed is in line with provincial requirements. That's why we're supporting the development of the process and the framework. As far as the technical studies, the partnership arrangements, that's all between the local and the property owners.
That's good to hear. I wish that would be referenced when in a typical report that says financial considerations. But I appreciate your response. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Timms.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. My first comment on this is that I really appreciate the region's opportunity here to assist growth in Niagara. And from the old point of view of growth anywhere in Niagara is good for all of Niagara. And the context of West Lincoln is that Regional Road 20 or Highway 20 has always been a commercial corridor between Hamilton and the rest of Niagara. And in this particular case, this area that we're talking about is outside of the Greenbelt and outside of the Escarpment Commission and outside of those pieces of legislation that intend to limit growth in areas of significance for other reasons. So there's a real opportunity for the region to assist. We know that there has been significant growth and growth pressure in the neighboring area of Hamilton. So I guess that's Binbrook, Glanbrook, Stony Creek. So there is clearly public demand for growth in this area along our Regional Road 20 corridor. So the opportunity here for the region to assist the township to make Smithville grow, I think should be grasped and supported wholeheartedly by the region because, as I say, it's growth anywhere in the region is good for all of the region. And there is clear public demand for growth in this part of the region, and we should seize it while the demand is hot and while the opportunity is there. So I'm 100% support this direction.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Councillor Edgar.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to seize on a comment that Councillor Timms just said, and he said there's obviously huge public demand for growth in this area, and I'm just curious as to whether that public demand is people that already live there, or is it people that want to live there? What I'm getting at is we've very recently been subjected to a huge controversy in one of our municipalities about the kind of growth that is going on there, and we've heard from citizens who have lived there for years and years and years, apparently, that they didn't need this growth, they don't want this growth, they don't want to look like Mississauga, and I'm just wondering, before a community or municipality comes forward with a request to grow, do they actually think about talking to the citizens, doing some kind of a survey or some kind of a plebiscite to find out whether the people that live there actually want to expand and extend the urban boundaries? Or are we going to, 20 years from now, have to go through this with another municipality and listen to all the crap they're flying around about how this is growth that we don't need and our taxes are going to go up and we never asked for this? And so that's what I'm curious about, is that I'm wondering whether the actual citizens are ever actually asked about this.
Right.
That's a great point, Madam Chair, to Councillor Edgar. All I can say is in terms of this process, and I haven't been intimately involved in terms of what the town has, how they've been engaging their residents over the last 10 years, but it did culminate, my understanding, with their municipal comprehensive review, that there was some public consultation involved in that. And they did decide that, yes, they want to grow, and they actually picked a number. They said, we want to grow to, I think it's something in the range of 30,000. 30,000. Yeah,
36.
so they were fairly discreet about how much they want to grow. And my understanding is that they've committed to some community infrastructure that is reflective of that overall population. So, I mean, we could report back to you in terms of the process that was followed to get to that sort of decision point in terms of asking us to identify a population for West Lincoln. We typically leave it up to the locals to undertake their own public engagement to whatever extent they feel is appropriate. But I know what you're saying. We don't basically want to be bushwhacked 10 years from now after we've gone through a process, identified growth, and then suddenly the community reacts against it. So that should be part of our reporting back to Regional Council, and I will ensure we do that.
Madam Chair, I'm all for leaving it with the local municipality, and I think that that's a good point, is that the region should stay out of that type of controversy, and the type of building infrastructure should be left up to the municipality in question and not pointed at from the region. So and I'm not being, I don't mean to be facetious, I don't mean to be causing problems, but I think it's important that the citizens have a voice in whether or not they're going to grow. And I'm hoping that that's what the municipality did, was I'm hoping that they actually asked the citizens. Thank you.
And you're aware that the request did come from West Lincoln itself?
I saw that, Madam
Right.
Chair, but that doesn't mean that the citizens requested it. That
Well-
means the municipality did.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Campion.
Thanks, Madam Chair. I have a question through you to, I guess, Mr. Mustachi. We, City of Welland is working with regional planning staff on a very similar type of project. I guess my question is, this is a more formalized approach. We've taken more, I guess, of a partnership approach working with the region. But would we expect the same considerations that would be applied in this motion?
Through you, Madam Chair, and Councillor Campion is correct in that we've been working with the City of Welland, and I've indicated that the process for Welland's request will be basically concurrent with this process. So all urban boundary issues have to be, now with the new growth plan, have to be addressed as part of the new regional official plan. I introduced Dave earlier. So we're preparing a new official plan. We want to get to the finish line at some point in time, hopefully, within 4 years or so. And that process will identify the new urban area for Smithville, if we're lucky, the new urban areas for the City of Welland as are coming forward, as requested by the City Council. And that's the process. So they're concurrent, they're not mutually exclusive. The context in West Lincoln is different than Welland because we're looking at a larger area that's primarily unserviced at this point. And there's some agricultural, the lands are rural in nature. So there's some additional requirements involved in West Lincoln that are not necessarily needed in Welland. But we are moving forward in Welland. We have a process for that. I don't think it has to be as extensive because just the amount of land, the number of property owners, it's quite different.
Councillor?
Yep, thanks. I guess more specifically, I'm referring to cost sharing on the study. We've submitted an RFP, and I'm speaking to our staff, we haven't heard about a response on that part yet.
So happily, I don't know if you were here for the consideration of the first report under SNP, where we've asked Regional Council to transfer some monies from the reserve into our SNP program. And part of that was to accommodate the funding for the Welland RFP for their urban expansion request. Great. So it's in process. Right. The check's in the mail.
Yeah, right.
Councillor, check your mail.
I can take it back with me if you want. The other question I had is more kind of global to the region in the sense that I believe we have an oversupply of residential lands. And so in order for urban expansion in Welland and in all of the region, somehow we're going to have to deal with the supply issue. And I'm just wondering, you know, if that's being taken into consideration. You know, we in Welland had brought forward something 7 or 8 years ago as part of our official plan, looking for a de-designation of some land in the city. I know staff was very supportive, but it really got referred back to the city of Welland. And so in order to be able to de-designate, I think we need to have somehow a smoother way of doing it. You know, it's, as you say, you count on the municipalities to really ask the region to, you know, this is what we want to do, take our lead, and hopefully you do that for us. And it really hasn't happened for us in one particular case. And so I'm concerned about how we're going to deal with de-designation. And I'm not asking for an answer now, but I think it's an issue that we have to deal with because it's going to have to happen at some point. And so maybe I'm just bringing it up as an issue that, you know, as part of this expansion, we're going to have to look at, you know, reduction at the same time. So I don't know if we can get a report or part of another report where you might have some thoughts as to how we could accommodate those types of issues from the local area municipalities. And, you know, 7, 8 years is a long time to be waiting and then have it referred back to our city again. Our position hasn't changed, so we have to be able to do these things quicker. Thank you.
Yes, please.
So just a little bit of context. As you know, we were working on on our municipal comprehensive review to forecast growth to the various municipalities. And then the province initiated the coordinated plan review with the update to the growth plan. And the growth plan changed the rules of engagement to some degree with respect to urban expansions and urban lands. We talked about, if you recall, the new density requirements that are sort of the foundational principles of the new growth plan. Without any real guidance from the province in terms of how to implement those new density requirements. In response, the province has said that they're going to prepare the guidance document in the form of a land budget strategy that will be basically the rule book for all municipalities, upper and single tier municipalities in the GTA. And that land budget guidance document is in the works right now, and I've been told is going to be released by the end of the year. So Q1 2018 will have basically the guidance document, which I think will help us rationalize and address how we're going to handle legacy urban lands. So at this point in time, what I'll say is that, yes, we're aware of that. Once we see a draft of the land budget guidance from the province, we'll be able to report back with respect to how that can be implemented here in Niagara, specifically with our legacy urban land issue, which is quite unique within the whole GTA.
Thank you for that. And I do want to express our gratitude for the cooperation and partnership we have ongoing, and looking forward to coming to conclusions sooner rather than later. Thank you.
And I'm sure we'll do that to everybody's satisfaction. Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Beatty?
Thank you, Chair. I wholly support the direction of this report, but I'm concerned about the context because there's a dynamic happening in terms of growth. One of them is higher densities and what the impact of that might be. And the higher density leads to more demand for storm management because you've got more roofs, more driveways, et cetera, impervious soils. We have the introduction of GO transportation all the way through to Niagara Falls and what impact that might have on people migrating to areas in Niagara. This bigger situation I've got is that we'll be faced at the end of this study with a massive investment, potentially, in transportation, in infrastructure, et cetera, when we've got surplus infrastructure further into the Niagara region. And I think we need to ask questions. The other dynamic, the final dynamic for me is the potential still of a mid-peninsula highway, which might again change the dynamic of where best to locate in Niagara. So again, the direction of this report, I wholeheartedly support, but when we reached the end of it, the conclusion, in my view, ought not to be an automatic yes to expansion of the urban boundary in Smithville, West Lincoln. It ought to be in the context of the greater Niagara needs. And the impact of potential debt for financing on massive infrastructure versus utilizing the infrastructure that already exists elsewhere in Niagara. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Councillor Hodgson?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to raise the issue that the province, through Ministry of Municipal Affairs, OMAFRA, and Ministry of Natural Resources, are in the process of a consultation on an agricultural system, and the first steps being a mapping exercise and a natural heritage mapping exercise. And it seems to me that it will have, particularly with reference to an urban expansion of Smithville, it's going to change the sort of planning framework that gets applied. So I'm just wondering, first of all, really what resources, what role we're maybe taking part in the consultations. I know we are through the Food and Farming Alliance, but also what resources we're putting into that, and how do you see the potential for this agricultural system mapping? It does seem rather ominous, some of the challenges for planning to square the removing land from agriculture is going to become that much more difficult in the greater Golden Horseshoe. So I'm just wondering what your thoughts are on that, because it's coming over the next several months.
Right. Mr. Giles, well, Director Giles.
Through you, Madam Chair. As Commissioner Mustachi pointed out at the beginning, this is a different area and there are a lot of things that have to be taken into consideration. One of the things that we have done in the very early stages is we've had discussions with the NPCA to look at the subwater shed mapping, which is a big, which will help to determine sort of the boundaries of the study area that we're looking at. And we've had some preliminary discussion with NPC already, who have pointed out a number of things that we have to look at, particularly in relation to the subwatershed mapping, and then how that will then influence the agricultural mapping and other things that are being done. But as a basis, we're starting by looking at subwatershed mapping and what the issues are around determining the boundaries we look at for the study area. So we are taking all of that into consideration, because it is very important, because there may be some issues that are related to subwatershed that might not allow development to occur in some areas, just for a start. So we're very aware of that.
And also, if I may, Madam Chair, there's also a memo in the council package which speaks to a request that Councillor Marshall had a few weeks ago with respect to the process for the conversion of agricultural land to urban land. So that speaks to what's happening with respect to the agricultural system that's being mapped. What I can say in a nutshell is that the guidance document that's coming forward from the province with respect to land budget, it's all based on need. You have to have a demonstrated need to justify the urban expansion. If you don't, then the lands stay in a rural or agricultural category. That's sort of the cornerstone of the whole policy process that has to be addressed.
Councillor? Thank you. Councillor Augustine?
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I'm trying to follow the logic here. So if you look at the report, the appendix to the West Lincoln letter, it says that these consultants that West Lincoln had said that they're expected that their target for population should be around 30,000.
Is that in the West Lincoln
Yes.
request? Thank you. And that's attached to the...
So then staff recommended a higher number, but part of the recommendation is actually that this group, this comprehensive group, come back. So when this letter was written, they hadn't done their work yet. Now I'm looking at the minutes or the agenda of that meeting that they're to come to. If you see, it says come to the June meeting. In the June meeting, the consultants recommend 30,000. So I need to know what the middle is, because all of a sudden we have the proposal before us, which is 36,000. So that's one thing. The second is that we've done, and there's reference in their document to the region's municipal comprehensive review. Councillor Campion pointed out that there's this give and take on there as well. And when it came forward to the municipal comprehensive review, that number I think that West Lincoln has is 29,000. Let's call it 30,000 and 9,000 jobs. Okay. But then, and that's on the tablet number 3 that's out there on the region's website about what that is, right? At the PIC3, public information session. So all that's fine, but how does that translate from, and here's where the logic, I get missed on the logic, because we're talking about greater densities, we're talking about ensuring that agricultural land is maintained and farming operations can continue, et cetera. So out of all that, this recommendation is to say, jump to an urban boundary expansion. I'd like to know about the steps of, what about increasing density? What about those kind of things? So can we hear about that, the other approaches that have been taken? Can we hear about the actual final report from these consultants? The interim report says 30,000. I'm really missing the logic on this.
Through you, Madam Chair, we, through to Councillor Augustine, we did have an opportunity to review the MCR document that was prepared on behalf of the township, and they did take into account intensification opportunities within their existing urban area, and concluded that their land supply was somewhere in the range, as I said, 5 to 6 years, depending on absorption rates. So clearly, I mean, the question, the problem statement here is that they don't have enough land to get to 2041, which is the mandate of the government. So we have to look at urban land needs in West Lincoln. It's not a question of when, it's not a question of if, it's a question of when. We're recommending that we start that analysis today. It's a long-term process. We haven't landed on a final number. That'll come out of the process. You're right, we have to look at all of the constraints. We have to look at servicing capacities, transportation capacities, and finally, we have to look at the community perspective. We're not going to actually have a unit count until we sort of drill into the secondary plan and understand what the community is going to look like. Then we'll have a more concrete number. At this point in time, a general quantum has been identified by the town. It's something that we're working towards. It may be more, it may be less. I don't know. But certainly they did look at their urban land needs. They looked at intensification. They do not have sufficient land to 2041. So that's something that we have to address.
Okay, thank you. Again, this is sort of coming to us. When Councillor Campion made the motion and many of us accepted the idea of deferring this process, we were ready to say, no, it's 29,000. We knew nothing, not a peep about an urban boundary expansion. So again, I'm looking for the logic on this. I don't know where this is kind of coming from. That's what we would have approved, and would you have come with a report to say, oh, it's a surprise, we need to do an urban boundary expansion? I don't think so. So I'm really confused about the logic of how we're getting right here, right now. Madam Chair, I'd like to see a copy of that final study from West Lincoln so that I can review it. And I do have questions about the servicing capacity and really the return on investment. I think Councillor Beatty spoke about it, and others. We just approved a development charge background study, which has increased the pipe in the ground, et cetera. And now with an urban boundary expansion, does that mean we have to make that even bigger and more? And what's the return on investment for that? You probably don't have the answer to that. Is that going to be part of this study?
Yes, Madam Chair. So that's the point of the whole analysis process. So we start off with the geography, the physical constraints, drill into the servicing constraints, and then at the end of the day, does this make sense or not from a regional perspective? And that's the ultimate decision that we will be making a year or two from now.
Thank you. Madam Chair, the commissioner stated that, at least what I heard was that the region has hired a staff person that specializes in urban expansion. Is that what the commissioner said?
Through you, Madam Chair, what I said is that we hired a consultant who specializes in this type of urban expansion processes.
So if we've hired a consultant, why do you even need to get, if staff, Madam Chair, have already hired a consultant, why do you even need council approval? Again, the logic is I'm missing the logic on this, Madam Chair. I think it's a case of cart before the horse. I think we don't have enough information, I don't think, to make this decision today. I want to make sure, I want to see what that comprehensive review was. And I'm concerned about the agricultural land in that area. Thank you.
Do you want to respond?
Sure.
In terms of, as I said at the outset, we retained the consultant because, as I mentioned, the growth in West Lincoln as proposed by, it's been proposed to us by the township. And so it's a regional planning matter. At the end of the day, we have to address the request. And in order to address the request, we've hired a consultant to help us map out the process in terms of how do we go about analyzing it, what are the requirements, and we're going to come back to you and say, okay, this is what the process looks like. This is how the township of West Lincoln is going to manage the process, and then we move forward. So it's an incremental process. This initial retainer doesn't mean that we've preempted all decisions on the matter.
Thank you, Commissioner. And Chair Caslin.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. And, kudos to West Lincoln for stepping up and trying to grow their town as aggressively as they are. I think it takes a lot of courage to do something like what they're trying to do. When I think back to our strategic plan, our strategic priorities, we talk about growth as being one of the 6 pillars of our strategic plan. And if I ask who's trying to do it the most, I would suggest that West Lincoln is doing that for economic prosperity reasons. If they've got no land, I don't see an alternative in that area for the pressures that they're feeling from. I mean, we've all seen it from Toronto through Burlington, Oakville, Hamilton now, and through the West. There is definitely an appetite for people who want to live in the area. Now with the transportation systems being improved, including GO Train and other escarpment crossing and other things that we're doing, I kind of see it as a natural evolution. And as I say, I think the plans are aggressive. I think, I'm not sure how he's going to achieve 36,000 people by 2041, but you know what? I applaud the effort. I applaud the effort in trying to grow his community as aggressively as they are. So thank you for that.
Yes, and the pressures you're referring to are market pressures from every direction. Right, and what we're going to find out is whether this is realizable or not through the study that is proposed here. Seeing no other speakers, you're ready for the question. All in favor? Any opposed? Thank you. Yes, please. We're going to put somebody on the spot here.
So Kirsten, stand up, please. I already introduced you. So as I mentioned earlier, Kirsten is going to be supporting the region with the program to approve local secondary plans. She's been already involved in a couple throughout the region and is quickly working through the backlog. She's a registered professional planner, 13 years experience, 10 years, her last 10 years with the City of Hamilton, specializing in secondary plans. So welcome Kirsten. Oh, and by the way, Kirsten is born and raised in Niagara and currently living in Grimsby.
Oh, well, thank you for that as well. Makes it even better, Kirsten. Moving on with the agenda under the consent items for information, we had a council request for this report, PDSC 28, the conversion of agricultural lands and settlement area boundary expansions. And I believe it was Councillor Marshall that requested this. Are there any questions or comments? Councillor Marshall?
Just to say, I thank the author and for it. It's pretty restrictive as contemplated, but thank you again for the quick turnaround.
So can you move the report and the seconder, please? Councillor Edgar. Any other questions or comments to the report? Yes, Councillor Court.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you to either the Commissioner or to Eric, one of the issues that came up, and we did the delegation at AMO with respect to gateway lands and looking at the new designation of prime employment lands or prime employment lands that could be designated outside the urban boundary for employment areas. Would this report, doesn't really touch on any of that, would there be any further conversation about that particular process that would allow for prime employment lands outside the existing urban boundaries, or if the Commissioner wanted to comment on that? I know there was some back and forth about that designation and what could be done on it.
Through you, Madam Chair, I don't think that I would sort of phrase the conversation that we were looking to identify prime employment outside existing settlement areas at this point in time. What we were trying to frame the conversation around is that we have an economic gateway designation, and certainly that designation implies some expectations in terms of a trade corridor, and we wanted to know what measures the province was going to put in place to protect the lands within that potential trade corridor. So I would de-link that conversation from any urban expansion issues.
And thank you. That's my understanding as well, that there wasn't necessary to have that designation within the urban boundaries. It wasn't an automatic move towards expansion of urban boundaries by pursuing that designation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Seeing no other questions, I'll call the question. All in favor? Any opposed? And that's carried. Moving on to PDSC 29, a report on Bill 139, which is really the OMB reform. I can have a mover and a seconder for the report, Councillor Nunziata and Councillor Quirk. Are there any questions or comments to the report? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? Any opposed? And that's carried. And 6.3 PDSC 31, a letter from our appeal of Niagara Falls City Council decision to approve the Gratoa Court draft plan of subdivision. Got a mover and a seconder, Councillor Beatty, and this is just to receive the letter. Councillor Height, all in favor? And that's carried. Under other business, is there anything under other business? Councillor Timms.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just wanted to comment on the great summer we've had on the Greater Niagara Circle route and the Welland Canal Parkway Trail. We've had some great numbers and great visitor counts on along the trail. St. Catharines has redone a lot of the signage along the trail. The region's contribution has helped the city and the region pursue or get construction underway on the memorial to the fallen workers of the Welland Canal. And I think it's time, and Councillor Beatty and I have discussed this, to ask Commissioner Mustache to help us arrange a reconvening of the Greater Niagara Circle Committee late September, early October. I know there are some outstanding issues and there are some good progress to be reported in a number of areas. So the Circle route is proving itself in one of its original mandates, which was to support the tourism economy and the number of cyclists from around the world that are using the Port Robinson Ferry I think you'll find impressive numbers on that score as well. So I'm just asked, put on the record, Mr. Mustache, that we want to convene a meeting in late September, early October.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you, Councillor. Yes.
Through you, Chair, to Councillor Timms. I believe that committee is in abeyance, and that's what we're discussing.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. Then we'll bring a motion to council on Thursday night to bring the committee out of abeyance so that we can proceed on the work of that committee and all the issues that are involved. Thank you. We consider it a notice of motion if you like. I'll bring a motion on Thursday night, and I'll ask if we can have the indulgence of council at that point.
If I may, if you could couch that motion in terms of just as an update with respect to the review and findings from, you know, the summer season, that would be fine.
That's helpful advice. We'll do it that way. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I read with great interest a couple of weeks ago an op-ed piece by our Commissioner, Mr. Mustache. And I just wanted to say how refreshing that when media falsely reports numbers and inaccuracies, if that's part of our overall communication strategy, then I concur. So part of our doing things differently, I wanted to thank Mr. Mustache for setting the record straight. And certainly it's all about who's delivering the message. I certainly believe that if a politician had responded to that op-ed, sometimes politics gets in the way of an honest answer. So I just want to say thank you for Mr. Mustache for replying to the inaccuracies of what I would consider a very inaccurate article.
Can I have the councillor expand on what he's talking about? I really don't, I
Yeah, can
didn't
you
see the
expand,
op-ed.
Councillor, please? What was the issue?
There was an issue with respect to a very prominent satirist, I will call Mr. Thomas, who put forward some inaccurate comments about the growth of Wainfleet. Mr. Mustache commented, setting the record straight, reflective of his inaccurate numbers. So I thought it was a very accurate reporting, and I thought it was very refreshing that staff actually took the time to comment on those inaccuracies in the media.
And also very important to have.
I think so too.
Kudos to you, Commissioner.
Just so for future reference, where I think we sort of draw the line is if it's a resident makes a statement, you know, that's not something that we would entertain commenting on. But if it's a media source where there's an expectation that they fact check, and things are reported in an inaccurate manner, we'd like to correct that as when we have that opportunity. That's sort of the fine line that we're riding.
Thank you for that. Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Beatty?
Thank you, Councillor Nunziata, preceded me on that regard too, because I too welcome the refreshing way in which that was refuted. I want to make some comments regarding their circuit route. One issue that happened because of the being placed in abeyance, we've really offended members of the circuit route by not communicating with them directly. There was talk of having a meeting in terms of doing that, laying out why we're taking some time off in the study. If I'm not mistaken, was not a doodle poll asking us, us being, I think, Councillor Quirk, Timms, myself, about a potential meeting of that review committee? Then I guess my question is, it's been several months since that was proposed. Okay. When is it going to be implemented?
Okay, I think we have an answer from Eric.
Through you, Madam Chair. Yes, there was an effort to try to get a staff working group, which included members of council, together for a kickoff meeting to look at discussing what the regional role would be in the circle route moving forward. Unfortunately, over the summer, we weren't successful in being able to land on a time when everyone could meet. We're in discussion right now with some staff in regional transportation planning about trying to set that meeting up for the month of October. So there should be another invite or a poll of dates coming out to the councillors who were requested to participate in that, as well as the staff members participating in that. And I would expect we'll have that out in the next 2 weeks. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Look forward to that. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Anything else under other business? And seeing none, we have 2 closed session reports. Any questions on those? So that we have Councillor Quirk. Could I have a motion to move into closed session, please? Councillor Quirk and the seconder, Chair Caslin. All in favor? And that's carried. So Walter can stay for this. Walter. So do I have to announce what we moved to close? But you have it there. So. Yeah, and it was there. Yeah. Anne Marie? Oh, thank you. I guess that would better take them separately. Yes. Okay. Are we okay now? Okay, all right. Could I have a motion, please, to approve confidential report PDS 32? Councillor Height and Councillor Dart. All in favor? Thank you. And a motion, please, to approve confidential report ED 13 2017. Councillor Edgar and Chair Caslin. All in favor? Thank you. And at this point, I will call the meeting adjourned until Wednesday, September 27th at 1 o'clock. And thank you very much.